All right, picture this. You're a product manager who's tired of the corporate bureaucracy slowing you down, so you decide to build your own product, strike on your own. I've actually known several people like this in product management. And it sounds like the perfect laboratory experiment or laboratory experiment. That's
laboratory.
Just saying. Because there's a bunch of vowels in the middle of the word. Is building for yourself the ultimate product management boot camp? Is that the shortcut, the hot wire to being the best product manager you can be? Or is it actually a really bad way to develop professional skills? Is it really great because then you learn how to code, so you basically know syntax and loops and how to do all this stuff, but now you got a bunch of bad coding practices that you have to unlearn? Is it a career hack, like a secret weapon, or is it like a dangerous weapon?
Dangerous weapon.
Dangerous.
This is a great topic, I think, because while you pointed out the parallel metaphor with building your own code, you're actually creating your own product, right? As opposed to learning the skill set.
And doing your own stunts.
And
consuming your own supply.
There you go.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Drinking your own champagne, because I don't like the other analogy. Let's get into this.
All right. The point number one is learning velocity and skill development that you can get. So the traditional product management education, first of all, is all over the map. Like the best way that people do it is years of on-the-job training and doing it the wrong way and hitting their head against things, right? Having bad experiences, getting burnout, stuff like that. But I mean, there are Maven courses, Reforged. There are like pay-to-play types of things out there. But the build-it-yourself approach, immediately applicable to other areas of your professional life of doing something for your own. So that's the first category. Is that, and I don't know if I'll be arguing for or against in this category, but that's the general category here. Okay, yeah. The speed at which you learn is not going to be faster than anywhere else unless you build something for yourself.
I think the interesting thing here is you're building it for yourself, so you do have to learn a lot of different disciplines very quickly. Whereas in the real world, maybe you're not allowed that, right? At your employer, maybe you're just given a specific aspect of it as you come into the field. If you're lucky enough to have other people you can look up to or lean on for advice and guidance, great. But that's not very common. We touched on this topic several times in different podcasts. So I would agree that it is a quicker path doing it yourself. One of the things that happens when you do it yourself is you really have no guardrails. So how do you ensure you're learning the right stuff and then you're learning it right?
Well, you nailed one of the points that I had written down on the back of a pizza box before we began, which is you generate this overconfidence in your own judgment. And now you start to see where it comes from, because like the company founders that are out there doing it all by themselves, like they're doing it with their own judgment and their assumptions, especially if they don't have product management, like professional training or the professional experience of a product manager, to say like the old lean startup kind of, like, don't test the market and don't build a lot and just MVP your stuff. They're coming up with an assumption and then going all in on it and then hoping to make their money back or whatever. That's the first thing you point out is like, hey, you're going all in and you're overconfident in not only your ability but your assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And the other sides where like self-building, it creates dangerous skill gaps. There's a few other points that I had written down for this one. Product management, like the last episode 2 episodes ago, I think. So I think 2 episodes ago, we put up a podcast about influence without authority.
Yep.
And this is one of those, that podcast would not have been necessary at all. Of like, here's some different tactics for you to try if you had the authority. So now you're in this role, you have all the authority. So now there's no one that would push back on you when you have authority. Anybody that would push back on you when you don't have authority, and the different reasons they're doing it, how many of those reasons go away when you are the one with the authority and now they're just too afraid to ask, or they don't think they can change your mind, or because of something you said or an argument or something they don't want to bring it back up, or maybe you're now their employer and they don't want to risk?
Yeah, I mean, so now they could be, more reticent of pointing out your blind spots, right? And so if you don't even know what they are, your blind spots, how are you going to resolve those? So you go along in your merry way thinking this is the way to build it, because all you know is that. You built it yourself and it's worked great, till you try to translate that into some other field. Not necessarily domain so much, like it's all, but some other field, some other area, and you might suddenly find yourself overtaken.
I don't think I have any other points in the against category that I wrote down for notes. I mean, those are the big ones: the overconfidence in your own ability. Nobody's really checking your assumption. Oh, nobody's really like checking you on anything. Yeah. Some people might hear that and say like, "Well, I get feedback, and I'm constantly asking." I'm not that kind of person. Stakeholder management that a product manager will do, cross-functional collaboration that a product manager will do. When you're building it by yourself, especially if you're solo, you don't have any of that.
Right. Yeah, very true. And you certainly don't have a product coach, probably.
So there's the pitfalls there. What are the positives here? The 4 is building it for yourself, building the tools, software, whatever for yourself to put your hands on a lot of stuff that otherwise you wouldn't be exposed to if you were in a larger organization. And I would also lean to say a larger and more traditional organization. Like if you're in fintech or something like that, there's very little chance that they're going to give you AWS access or whatever, access to go poke around the database and create new tables. And
just the bureaucracy, right? Yeah, that makes sense. So you'll get there quicker, but where there is, it is anybody's guess, right?
Also, boy, all that cost of delay, it just all goes away when you're doing it yourself.
It's quick. You don't have to get permission, right? Or you don't have to do all of that stuff. Nope. So yeah, agreed.
Nope. No bureaucratic barriers. Nobody kind of checking you for good or worse. Nobody checking you to say like, hey, this hypothesis-driven way of operating, maybe we can just say I'll just make all the decisions and we can move forward. Like you have a lot more freedom to do things the right way. That'd be my put. And then as you do things the right way, again, if you have this growth mindset, you really do, and you put that hat on, you put all the hats on because it's just you. Like you can really next level
accelerate. So that's the key right there. Don't be arrogant and think that this is the way. Yeah. Maybe once in a while, just get someone to check on it.
That's true. So casting a wide net, getting a lot of feedback, and everything that anybody that probably listens to this podcast would expect. In this category, if you choose the self-building path, I would say set artificial constraints that mirror what normal PMs have. Talk to users. Don't stay on things too long. Have real demos. Have actual budgets. Or at least if you don't have budgets, at least report. Keep the money and what you're developing somewhere so you can look back and make decisions over time.
That's critical if you're going to go to the next level and perhaps get some funding for whatever it is you're trying to do.
The other thing would be reach out to your community, because there might be people that would just like to look at what you're doing and give you some coaching advice just because they think it's cool. Like, that
is a good call out. Yeah, it's a very good way to, I think, just make sure that you're calibrating where you're going. Right. I agree with that.
We established that self-building might actually accelerate your learning. Like there's opportunity there. The next category is user empathy and understanding of the market. Product managers, their core talent is building for users. And the build for yourself approach, it creates a paradox that says that you already have access to the perfect user, but that user may have limited market perspective. And that's okay if you super niche down.
This is where it's absolutely critical to make sure you validate at least some of the early ideas, right? Because you could just end up on a tangent and build the best thing there is, but nobody's buying it.
Right. And I'm definitely not buying it. So right away in the against, I'm going to throw out some against points to kind of kick us off here, which is the main point I'm trying to make is that building for yourself, it can destroy your perspective of the market right away. Let me just throw that one out there. So it creates like all of the most dangerous assumptions that you make because you represent your market segment. Oh, I'm a journalist, so I know like what tools journalists need. I'm going to double down and just build great journalism tools, while the broader journalism market kind of keeps disintegrating, and like there's no money to buy in it. Everyone's independent. There's no money to buy anything.
Right.
So your experience that helps you make those assumptions, although they are informed, it might lose a broader market context. That's what I mean by market context.
Yeah. So you could fail potentially, right? But you're failing quickly. And you got to then take some time out to understand what just happened here, right? Because if you just move up and say, hey, listen, I know now, I've learned about X, whatever it is, and move on to the next product, you're destined to repeat your mistakes.
Yeah, and the other thing, yes, and.
I like it.
I did this a couple of podcasts ago. In our yes and portion of the podcast today, you definitely might fall into that trap, but also you might end up building products that do work, but they only work for like the most powery of power users, the most powerful power users, and then fail with mainstream adoption. And then like, is that enough money to, So yeah, you've exploited your expertise to build to the niche, but now you've niched down too much. Your personal preferences turn into your requirements. Doing it without market validation gets you in trouble. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's really just a pet project at that point, right? And
Right.
so you're building something. If you do happen to hit even that, the power user market or whatever it might be, great. But is it great? Because now your product's out there and your competitors could swoop in, right? Take the technology you've got pretty much.
So there was a side tangent that got cut out of the podcast where I was looking for a clip from Jeffrey Bezos about how long it took the competition to respond to different products and offerings they came out with. I remember the clip very well because he was surprised that it took them like a couple years to come up with. I think 2 years was the average he said in that clip of how long it took his competitors to respond.
That is longer than I would have
Yeah.
expected.
So that was his viewpoint. Nothing that you build is going to be unique for very long because everyone will come along and copy it. I think about this as market segmentation, and I'm always like banging that drum, market segmentation. I was like, what feature can we come up with that differentiates ourselves in the market, cuts the market in half and be like, well, now the market is really not shared by all these people. We cut the market in half and the market is ours alone until everybody catches up to us, and then we move on. You know what I mean? Move on and
Yeah.
keep dividing and
So
conquering.
you got to keep innovating the whole time.
Yeah, well, that was his point in that video. You do need to stay ahead, but you need to foster the culture that stays ahead. In order to do that, you have to constantly be doing user research, user validation, data-driven decision-making. You kind of need to be looking back at your decisions and seeing which ones were good, which ones are bad, which ones you use data for, which ones were an assumption. And right there, most mature companies don't even do that.
I agree. If you're one of those people that is going to build everything yourself, one of the critical things you should really prioritize to learn is exactly that, right? Get validation of your assumptions. You need to actually learn all of those things that come later, though. You're in this speed thing now, right?
Right.
So you're building something, but I think getting the head start in the right direction is key instead of just getting a head start.
Speed's super important.
I'm not denying it.
There's a lot of people on the internet right now, especially with AI tools, saying speed's the only thing.
Build it and they'll come.
It was the dumbest take of 2025 until like the next week after I edited the podcast and I put it up, and then I saw another take that was even dumber. Oh, 996 Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
You guys are importing China's hustle grind culture now.
Right.
We're scraping the bottom of the barrel at this point. What's next? Oh
Right.
man. Positives in this category, like the 4.
You already started on one of the 4s, right? It's speed. You're learning a lot of stuff real quick, and that just is unbeatable. The other option is you just go through the mill and hope for the best, right?
That's right. This should be a benefit. I was just talking to somebody I used to work with about growing an organization. Scaling. We don't call it scaling. It's called growth. You need a special growth product manager for that. I was talking to her about scaling, saying that when the org grows, there needs to be some time put into figuring out how do we keep the team small, how do we put groups of teams together in programs that logically make sense and they're not silos.
Right.
They work together. Reporting lines kind of need to be figured out, that kind of stuff. Because one hiring manager supports 5, 6, 8 teams. Like there's an upper limit. So if the person that hires all your engineers goes across 50 teams? I mean, that's a little ludicrous. Comes time for performance. They're like, who are you? Where do you work?
Exactly. Yeah, and we've all seen that, especially mid to large orgs.
And one of the things I told her was I always have lobbied every place that I worked to have the development team be talking directly to customers. And if the org has grown to a point where you're getting further away from customers because of bureaucracy, well, now we want to break that org structure and get back to a little of that small company kind of mentality. This is like always a push and pull with big companies, access to users. I bring that up because it reinforces there's no translation layer between the customers and the actual people building the software. If you're the one building the software and you're building it for yourself, there's no translation. Your product decisions, speed, user feedback, that kind of stuff, it's immediate. Every pain that your customer would feel, you're experiencing firsthand. You get immediately reviled by failures or quirky functions or bad UX or whatever.
Yeah, and guess what? Now you learn another skill, right? Prioritization.
That's right. Ruthless prioritization.
Yeah,
because again,
absolutely.
If you're the solopreneur over here and you're building everything yourself.
Well, how many things can you be working on?
If I had a suggestion, this is not really a takeaway, but I guess it is a takeaway in the form of a friendly suggestion. You know what really helps? I know you're building it for yourself and you're developing those product management muscles. However, it would still be good, even if you're building it for yourself and nobody else sees you, it still would be good to reach out to those forums, like reach out to say, hey man, can I have some of your time to just review your backend tools with me so you can see what I'm working on and see what you would do. Well, maybe like out of 10 people, 2 of them give you their time. But still, even if they're not using it, that's still, like, to me, those kind of conversations are the gateway to opening up new business. Yeah. That's been every software firm I've been at, where you have little conversations like that, and you uncover big new features, new paths to the application, new ways forward that were previously completely obscured or invisible to you because you just weren't thinking about that until you got enough people together in the room that had the same problem.
I think that's a great takeaway, if that's what we're calling it, right? Because these other people that you're reaching out to, they would be able to input into your thinking things that you haven't thought about. It's because you're assuming things, and you basically have a blinkered view of what you're building. So they might be able to come up with something, and whatever they come up with, that's going to be very refreshing for you to see and take in and say, yeah, I didn't consider that. So I think if you're building it yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean you're by yourself, right? You could build a coalition of people that share perhaps some interest in this.
Right.
And they don't necessarily all have to have the same challenges, right? Mm-hmm. But they share an interest, which is good. They bring in all these diverse perspectives that otherwise you wouldn't be privy to.
So user empathy, it gets complicated when you're doing it on your own because you have to kind of go out of your way. Well, you can just build features. Like, you don't need to talk to anyone. So it's a bit complicated to try to convince somebody that is building something for themselves that, like, oh, you should go out and talk to other users because the insights you get from them can help you. And someone who doesn't come from product management, like, that might be a difficult thing to convince them of.
Sure.
Even if you solve that problem, like, there's another challenge, a resource management challenge.
Oh, yes.
I'm not talking about people here, because remember, they're not resources.
That's right.
So in the real world, PMs, product managers, succeed by working within constraints, not around constraints. That brings us to point number 3 in this debate, which is resource management and prioritization. I'm going to go straight to the against in this category. The category, again, of resource management is removing the essential constraints that define product management. You're not even doing product management at that point if you're removing all the constraints. I mean, the professional product managers depend on working within organizational limitations. Like, the reason you have to do stakeholder management and have the quad and the whole podcast we did on stakeholder management, if you're a product manager, you definitely should check out Arguing Agile 201, Mastering Stakeholder Communications and Management, for all the tips that we had. I mean, we had a whole podcast. How long was it? 48 minutes. Definitely worth 48 minutes at double speed or whatever. Definitely worth 20-something minutes.
Have a coffee and a refill.
And removing that and not having to deal with that because it's just you. You don't have to talk to anyone. That's
the quickest path, right? You don't have to go through approvals or any kind of political decision-making gambits.
It seems, on one hand, that's great. I mean, that really clears a field for you to get things done. On the other hand, yikes.
Well, you don't learn anything how to navigate those very stormy waters that exist in most organizations. So as long as you just keep building things for yourself, you're fine.
We're going to come back to so later on the podcast, I think about point 7 or 6 or 7, we're going to come back to what you just said. Is now that you have nobody to challenge you and you have no stakeholders to manage, you have no reason to improve your communication skill.
That's right.
You have no reason to go out of your way to make sure people are included, and now you're basically sabotaging yourself.
Let's leave that one for now.
But the other one is you never learn to justify resource application to skeptical executives or engineering managers or team leads or whatever.
Yep.
You never learn how to put your bets into the form that it gets accepted. You can pitch it and it gets accepted by executives or whoever you need to finance people.
That's a critical skill set for any PM, right?
You don't do those things.
No, because you have nobody to convince at that point.
Although the reason that I'm pitching them as if they're bad, but actually they're in the against category because I can make the case, and I don't even need to have to stretch to make this case, that this is all a waste of time. You're building great products for users that love them, even though the user is you. And maybe you have like community people that love it too. But all that other stuff is like corporate bureaucracy.
So stay as a solopreneur basically for the rest of your life, because the minute you want to go back to working for someone or go to work for someone, all those essential skills are going to, the lack of those rather, are going to drown you.
It's going to be difficult to keep that resume updated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because you won't know how.
Oh, no. So if we're in the category of resource management prioritization, self-building teaches the purest form of prioritization.
Everything is MVP.
Everything. Absolutely.
Everything's critical.
Everything. Yeah, you don't work on any, I'm just doing this because I'm kind of chilling and wasting time kind of features. You're working on things because you need those things.
Right. And you're dismissing things that you think are the wishes and desires, right? You think you know the wants and the needs, and you're going to focus on those.
So as an example, to people that might be like, well, what are you talking about here? Like in the tool suite that I developed for the podcast, one of the things I always wanted to do is I wanted to add more things to the thumbnails.
Yeah.
Like any image I want or whatever. And I can do that. I can do that. I do have the ability to do that with the tools, but I wanted to have like a gallery of like, meme images and like the little angry face dude from the internet, like with the, anyway. And I want to have like a gallery of that kind of stuff. It's cool to have, and I would use it, but I can add any image to a thumbnail the way I have the thumbnails now. I just don't keep them around. No, I just add them and then they go in the thumbnail. Maybe it's not the best example. It's the example that comes to mind. I always wanted to have a gallery that goes with the show that's like, these are the repeating images that I constantly use. Like I'm always using the little thought bubbles with the speech and whatnot and thumbnails. I love using that kind of stuff. I have to go and get it from somewhere every time,
right?
Which is a little bit of a pain, but also like not enough of a pain for me to actually go and develop a whole feature to have like, oh, here's a database table that stores them, and then here's a place that they get stored, and I pull them back and I use them, but then they're different than the thumbnail. They're different than the people images, and the people images go here and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care enough to think about any of that. 0.01 seconds in my brain to be like, nope, don't care.
Yeah, because you're not asking anyone, you're not listening to anyone, you're the decision maker.
There is a lot to say on the advantage of eliminating a lot of stakeholder noise. Because a lot of product management, especially in larger companies that I've been in, a lot of your time is taken up by stakeholder noise. You have to listen to people because they're in important seats of influence around the business, and they want to talk to you about a concern or whatever. You got to listen to them and figure out ways to tactfully say no, because you can't really say no. And so you say, oh, I'll put it in the backlog, and you have all these tricks and whatnot. You build for yourself. You don't do any of that.
Yeah. Again, I agree. There's a lot to be said for that, right? So if you're a product manager who is building it for yourself and you have a deep backlog, how's that feasible? Because you're only working on emergent stuff that you think about, dream about right away.
I don't think
you don't put things in the backlog like that. You never suffer from that.
Yeah. I don't think you would need to. But also the other thing that supports this strong prioritization skills is it teaches you to build MVPs.
Yeah.
You're not playing the game of like, well, it's an MVP, but it's got a million features, and we're putting here's a deadline, and no matter what the deadline is, it's the way too early or whatever. You're not doing that. I mean, you really are doing. I know I want to build a gallery that shows thumbnails and meme images and this and that and whatever. But how about I just build all of the thumbnails that I've used in a previous show in one place and just start with that.
Right.
Because I can do that pretty quickly because I know what the thumbnails are. It's not a bunch of random images. They're going to be in order. I'll know exactly what I get when I pull them back, and if it's right, because I'll be able to look at the thumbnails and see and I can build that. So if you're, and that's not even MVP. I mean, MVP would just be like a screen mock-up, and I would see it.
Right.
Which I do that with Claude. Actually, I do that a lot with Claude. I have a lot of back-end jobs, for example, that run with the podcast. I have to generate thumbnails. I have to upload things to YouTube, stuff like that. And I need to know the status of the back-end jobs. So
you need some sort of an orchestrator.
Yeah, but I have an orchestrator because I use AWS. So the background jobs get kicked off, Lambdas run, stuff's flying around under the hood, right? But there's not one place you can go to say like, hey, let me see all my in-flight stuff. Because they're like, oh, I'll go to the episodes, see what's uploading, then go over here to thumbnails and see the thumbnails are in, then go over here and to see whatever. I just want to know, hey, I'm going to go make a coffee or go in a shower, like about how long is it going to take for all my background jobs to be done and my episodes are ready to work? And I just want to go to one place to see all my stuff that's rendering.
That's reasonable.
Rather than like to build that would take me a long time. I mean, it would take me a day of development effort to build all that. It's not really a long time. To me, a day of development effort is a long time. But if I can see a mock-up in like a wireframe that is like clickable, that I can see how, and Claude's pretty good at generating a first pass wireframe. If I can see the wireframe and I'm like, this isn't really like It doesn't really give me the visibility I wanted.
You pivot quickly.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to do it. So like, I am the audience for the MVP, and I'm also the creator of the MVP, but I'll know right away. So that's like building stuff for myself.
Yeah.
Like, I know right away. I easily could be showing that to somebody, and if they don't jump out of their seat, like, that's the thing about MVPs, which we could do a revisit the MVP
We should.
podcast. But one of the things about MVPs is, like, if people don't jump out of their seat super excited, you have a problem with your MVP you're showing to people. And a lot of people don't realize that, like, the best pushback you're going to get from users when you show them your MVP or wireframes or clickable wireframes or whatever it is it's pretty good. Yeah, it's all right. Oh, it looks nice.
All right.
It looks nice. That means they hate it and they're not going to use it. Like, that's what that means. And like, that process is broken. For normal people that are not product managers, that have not been doing this for years and years and years, yeah, people are not going to tell you they hate something.
They never say those words. So if you're a build it yourself person and you're prioritizing things, right? Do you have delighters in there as per like the Kano model, or do you just simply say, to heck with that, I'm just going to give them exactly what, not them, but me.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're the consumer.
That's a good question. I would say a lot of the delighters probably get deprioritized when you're not building for somebody else.
Yes.
For example, when you're uploading or when you're loading a screen and it takes a long time, I look at that stupid loading spinny thing or whatever all the time, saying, I should really replace that with some kind of silly animated logo or a game or something. Yeah. I absolutely never do, because it's just not worth the effort. You know. Also, I hate front end development, so that's it.
Yeah.
We really beat this category up. I don't know if I have a great takeaway here. Is if there's a way to create artificial resource constraints. I think just tracking what you're working on back to features and I'm trying to think about a way where you can emulate what a normal product manager would have to say of, like, these are the bets that I was betting on and this is how it turned out. So something along the lines of, here's the bets that I had and here's how long it took. Because what I'm trying to get out of it is I'm trying to get a way to judge your bets out of it. Some sort of tool for retrospective. It's not like the time tracking one really bugs me, and I wouldn't want to suggest that, but I'm trying to get something for you that keeps the pressure on, so you don't just run away and go off on a tangent and create something that, like, was not important. I'm just trying to build some checks and balances when you're working by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one of the things to consider is, and this really falls back into the artificial constraints, right? So you just have a limit for the amount of time you're going to spend on it, because when you're building it yourself, really it's time more than anything else. And when you reach that, just say, well, what have I got, right? Is it good enough? If so, I'm done.
The old Pomodoro clock,
yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
And then good. Just, if it stands upright, even if it doesn't like waltz and dance, that's fine. Just move on from there.
The Pomodoro sessions would be good. Set up a number that you're willing to pay. That would be good. What was Alfonso used to say that he used to do Pomodoro sessions for coding, and I can't remember what his session length is. I don't remember. 2 hours.
The recommendation thing is, yeah. I mean, the Pomodoro techniques focus more on tasks than working on product. So you have to make it your own. But for tasks, it's 20 minutes on, 5 minutes break for 3 sessions, and then take a longer break, which would be like your lunch break or something. Okay.
So you'd have to figure out for yourself what your...
Hour and a half doesn't seem unreasonable.
For me, it's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes for me. After 90 minutes of working on the same thing, I start squirming. I start complaining to my boss. And because I'm working solo, it's annoying.
You complain to yourself?
Yeah, complain to me. And I don't want to hear myself.
Yeah.
So anyway, the resource constraints here, they can shape your prioritization. But when you're building for yourself, what side of balance wins? The technical depth versus the strategic breadth? Product managers, like, you need to balance your technical understanding, your technical capabilities, and your technical work with strategy. Because the against in this category is, like, super easy to see from a mile away, which is, if you're doing all the work yourself, you're doing all the development, you're doing all the research, you're doing all your own stunts, you're going to get carried away with technical stuff. You're going to get carried away with the minutia of the day.
That's. I mean, look, there's no arguing against that, right?
Yeah.
That's just the obvious.
I'm in the for category. All right, take away the against category, because the against category here is you'll go chasing technical waterfalls. That's right.
Go chasing waterfalls.
TLC, technical something. I don't know what the LC stands for. Anyway, that was a joke from 1997.
Back in the days of Windows 95.
We need to check our dates. This is important because TLC waterfalls 1995.
Whoa.
Okay. I was off.
Back in the days of Windows 95.
Oh man.
Well, I don't know if it actually came out in 95 now that I think about it.
So Waterfalls came out, was the album. That was a great album too. Waterfalls came out in 1995. Oh, I didn't know they recorded that in Atlanta. That's cool. And then August 24th, Windows 95 came out.
In 1995?
I want to find out when Windows ME came out. And Windows ME was September 14th, 2000. The greatest operating system of all time, and I will die on that hill. No, that can't be true because the greatest operating system of all time was Windows
3.11.
I was going to say Windows NT because that thing ran in production for a bajillion years. I'm pretty sure there are still companies with Windows NT running.
It would not surprise me.
Propping up their LDAP because they're too scared to migrate
to Active Directory.
That's right. Absolutely. Oh, man. Anyway, thanks for a trip into 1995. I don't know how much of that Windows 95 memory trip is going to stay in here, but I would expect that your biggest point here that you're going to have against me is every minute you spend coding is minute that you're not hitting the market. You're not doing market research. You're not doing outreach. You're not doing marketing. You're not doing positioning, which are all super important. You know, and I will tell you, I feel personally attacked. Sorry. I feel that one because I've often lobbied as a product manager to say like, hey, I can do product marketing manager stuff, but we would be far more effective if you would just get a product marketing manager and then share them just like a UX person, right? Share them across product managers and then we'll be enhanced by this capability so that they come in as more as like a consultant, an in-house consultant.
Yeah.
And then they can learn our products and they can spend more time with the teams and embed with teams at certain times when like launches are close and stuff like that, because that's a special skill set.
It is, but traditionally that role has been seen as one that embeds itself in a product, right?
Yeah.
Possibly a product line, as opposed to a shared services model where you sprinkle them where needed.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand how that would work in real life because these people really need to know the entire product back to front. They're the product marketing manager.
Yeah.
So they supplant sales who really only manage the relationships with prospects and turn them into customers.
Right.
Anything else beyond that, they can lean on the product marketing folks.
Well, they could have, but we fired all those people because we don't know how to prove their value. Them and the Scrum Masters and the UX researchers. Yeah, we don't
need any of those.
That's right. We don't know. The finance people filled out a sheet and they couldn't figure out what cell to put them in, so they
said fire them.
That's right. They came to us at Brian Software Development Company and said, "Listen, Brian, you have to cut X dollars from the budget." We said, that's a very specific number. What does that mean? They're like,
it's the sum total of all these people's salaries.
It's these people. Yes. And I said, what is your plan, you guys, for cutting these people? And they're like, now we have the 4-point plan of startup, cash in, sell out, bro down. That's man, like what am I doing? What am I arguing for? Against? For? What am I doing here?
Going for against, weren't you?
So we talked about the time spent doing technical stuff, and then we got off track because we started talking about like, well, if you're in a large company, they don't value any of this strategic stuff anyway that helps your teams with the marketing people. They keep cutting these strategic resources because they don't know how to monetize it anyway. So is it really a bad? Like, yeah, no, it's still...
It's a bad thing. In larger companies, though, they have a clear demarcation, so you probably aren't going to get to play with technical stuff anyway. If you're in product management, you do product management-y stuff, and we have a whole set of technical teams over here.
Yeah.
So that idea of getting hands-on and trying things, I don't know if it exists in these big, large companies where you have these departments that take care of various different things.
So, I'm not giving a great pushback in the 4 category here because my pushback basically is like, well, everyone's bad at strategy anyway. So, if I'm going to flip on the audience here and take the 4, take the 4 side and say, like, no, you should build stuff.
Yeah.
You should build stuff in product or whatever. I mean, like other people in the business, right, too. You should build stuff because then it lets you understand that something that seems simple, now because you've got 30 tables you have to consider when you're adding this new thing, suddenly you have to consider the rest of your architecture, and now it's not so simple. Oh, it's super easy. We'll just add a new table. Well, that's great. Now you're going to add a new table, but now you've got to write a database migration script. And that's a huge pain that you didn't have to deal with if you had no active users, but you can't have downtime. So when you build something for yourself, you get credibility, and I say it's credibility with the development teams. What I really mean is you get empathy to understand technical debt, scalability, architectural decisions, how all that factors into like when's it going to be done, like that question, when am I going to have it done? You'll now be as enraged with that question as I get enraged with that question, because now you understand how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
So
and I think that the other side of it is you actually do build credibility with your development teams if you can understand that and have those kinds of discussions, as opposed to, like you said, when's it going to be done, or why can't we do this? Surely it's easy. It's just adding one table.
And the more you build yourself, the more it helps you be aware of current industry trends and stuff like that. Typically what you would go to a CTO to bounce your ideas off of, and the CTO would be very invested in, like, here are the current trends, here's what people are saying about this, here's what people are saying about that. So just a quick sync with your technical person, because they are up on all the technology. You know what I mean? The technology is emerging and the stuff that you use. You know what I mean? Like when I use background removal for our thumbnails, for example, they just put out in July. It's October now. In July was the latest update to the background removal tool that I use. I haven't updated to that yet. So I don't know what's in that library yet. Right. That kind of stuff is like you don't know what's out there. Quick check in with your technical people on a regular basis. Like how many product managers have some sort of sync where they check in with their technical folks to say, like, hey, let's have a review of all the libraries that we're using, of all the third-party apps or whatever that we're using, of what they've done and what we can take advantage of. I've never been in a company.
Happen. I've never seen that.
Just a review board. Just a review board of like, this is all the stuff that we're taking advantage of that we use in our software on a regular basis. You know, you're in charge of these 3 libraries, this other person in charge of these 3 libraries, and we'll just have a review board. Here's the version we're on. Here's the latest version. What are the features in the middle? Let's all just have lunch catered in, take the morning, go over everything. And
if you're a non-technical product owner, right? So I can imagine some of the audiences go, well, that's all techie talk, guys. I'm not technical, right? I just leave all that to all these smart people over there. Okay, but look, you don't have to get down to even like very detailed level. It helps you to understand, like you said, technology trends, what's hot, what's not. So what are some of the new things that we're working on? Right. If you understand that, you could have a conversation, or if it comes up with your prospects or customers, we're not using that deprecated third-party tool anymore, right? That speaks volumes as opposed to just looking at the ceiling because you have no idea.
Right. Well, also, like, you have a strategy. You have a plan. So, like, the solopreneur here is doing it all themselves.
Sure.
So I hope if you're solo, like, that there's a takeaway here about, like, setting time boundaries. But I feel the people that are not doing stuff solo, that are just randomly walking into this podcast, this is something you could do as a product manager. It's within your capability to ask your technical leadership, hey, can we set up some kind of review where we just, like, look through the libraries? And at first, they're going to grumble because nobody wants to go pull all the requirements for your app and then look through every single documentation. First of all, you should be scraping that stuff and just like putting it into a report.
Yeah.
You got married to the library, so don't tell me you don't want to know anything about them. Like
you're stuck with it.
Yeah, you're stuck with them.
Yeah.
I'm not getting involved in it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not getting involved. But
that really is a way to go, right? But I suspect if you did that as a build it yourself person, you would spend a lot of hours working.
Maybe I could also see, like, the libraries don't change that often. So you could put like a reminder on your calendar once a month to look through the requirements.txt and just see what the latest are, or develop a script that grabs the requirements.txt and gets the latest version. Because if you use 20 dependencies and only one of them in the last month has updated their your job is super easy. You booked a whole hour to go read and investigate, and then you only have to investigate one repo to see what they changed. Minor bug fixes. Okay, done. You just save yourself an hour. But you're staying on top of it. And what I just outlined puts you ahead of 99% of professional...
Easily. Yeah. So when you turn to your developers to have that convo, earlier I mentioned prospects and customers, but even internally, right? They are more likely to entertain your question because they know you understand. Right? At least you're talking, again, you're not talking about deep technical stuff, but how to use libraries and all of these things, right? How to include them, things like that. You're just simply saying, do we use, for example, XYZ, right? We do. Okay. I see they're coming out with a new version. What's the impact on us? I mean, just having those conversations. Yeah.
But also learning from failure. Technical skills are valuable, but product management also involves managing risk. So the next point that we're going to talk about is failure tolerance, and risk management. So from the perspective of learning from failure is crucial for product managers. We talked about the MVP stuff earlier on the podcast, but the stakes and consequences of failure, they differ dramatically between personal projects and professional responsibilities. The against that you're going to hear from this category is that your personal failures of like trying to build some cool little tool or whatever on your own, that doesn't even transfer into the professional risk management that a normal product manager running a real business.
Well, so in the case of your own personal thing you're building and it fails, I mean, you're basically playing with your own money. In the other case, you're playing with somebody else's money. Totally different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of very valid against here that would say like, hey, your personal failure doesn't transfer professionally because the scale is too big for your own personal money versus like your company's money. Sure. Personal failures don't affect the future of your career, your entire team, possibly company, and they don't affect the larger company for a long-term scale like they would if you were doing this professionally.
Right.
That'd be the immediate pushback on this one. And
I
then
mean, you're saying that this is a fun thing. You're trying to build something, and if it doesn't work out, you can just abandon it.
That would be, so like this personal project, like you can just abandon it. There's no consequences. Like you can't walk away.
The only thing you've invested is a lot of time, right? And you just say, well, that's fine. Yeah. I'm going to move on. You can't do that in a professional setting.
And also, you don't, when you're doing something for yourself, like there's no organizational change management involved.
Right.
So when you're multiple teams implementing things, you have change management between the teams. You have like the team topologies, kind of like what team does what are the borders, when do we
things like dependencies even, right? You have none if you're working for yourself. Right. It's just a question of prioritization. But again, in the real world, you have dependencies that need to be met for you to continue, but you also have to meet someone else's dependency. Right. So that is huge. You don't learn any of that.
I think that's a legitimate against here. That's kind of a mark against you here. I penciled in a few like, hey, self-building creates a safe space for failure more so than in your professional career, because you can really take some wild risks, some big swings, and the cost of losing or going down a wrong path, even if you say like, oh, I know the MVP didn't hit with these customers or people are just not saying or whatever, but I'm going to build it anyway. Like you can do that, and the risk of losing it all is like super low. Yeah, because we're talking pennies.
Sure.
So that's the other side of this, allowing yourself to fail fast and cheap without impacting your career or your team or having to fire a bunch of employees or whatever.
Right.
Okay, well, that's an advantage. And having those failures and saying like, why did the failure happen? And coming to those learnings, I would say that does transfer professionally. That'd be my argument.
I think the concept of introspecting on your failures or near misses, how are you going to say it, and learning from that does translate, right? But that assumes that if you're flying solo, you're actually even doing that. I mean, I don't know if you would do that. You would simply just brush it off and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to point out here was there's not the organizational facade of politics and the other things that prevent teams from coming to the proper conclusions about why things failed. Like that stuff's not here when you're doing things for yourself.
Sure.
So you theoretically should get a more clear understanding. But if you're not stopping to introspect,
you gotta have the intent.
Right. If you're not stopping, like you're not going to hit the learning. Like if you're just concerned about running from point A to point B, you're never going to stop and really think about that time for thinking. But also, I would hope that because you're solo here, because you're building it for yourself, the pressure to just move on to the next thing is less than it would be in your professional career, where you have the whole stakeholder management quad pushing you to the next thing and kind of pushing you past that quiet, introspective kind of like deep dive.
Yeah.
Maybe if I have a takeaway here, it's if your personal project fails, I would try to approach it with a professional response. That would be my recommendation. You don't need to write out full postmortems or communications like you would do with stakeholders, but you need something that says, this was my bet. This is the way it turned out. This is maybe how deep down the path I went. You need something.
Yeah, rudimentary RCA. I mean, that's at least at a minimum, you should do that to learn from it, right? More than anything else. Yeah. But you're also building that muscle to do that.
Right.
And so, I agree with all of that. I think that is one of the things that you do if you have the intent, right? I'm doing this, but if it fails, I want to learn from it. That has to be that intent going in. Otherwise, you're just going to, like I said, move on. It didn't work, so let's move on.
Well, speaking of moving on, we're going to move on from this topic. So does building actually help you get hired, get promoted, get respected in your professional career? So career advancement, professional credibility, like the ultimate test of any learning approach is whether it will advance you in your career, right? I already want to argue about that. The ultimate test of any method, any approach that you take to learning is, can it get you ahead professionally? Self-building products, it's great for your portfolio, it's great for your learning. Does it translate to a hiring manager having confidence in hiring you and then your promotion opportunities later in your career?
Look, I want to say clearly here, if you have built something and whether you succeeded or failed, but you've actually learned things along the way, absolutely it helps you. At least at the interview, answer questions like, tell me about one of your failures. Well, here you go. But I mean, really, once you land the job, it does help you because now you're aware of the greater picture that is only magnified from when you were doing things all by yourself. Right. So the shortcomings that you had, if you remember those when you get into a professional environment, you're more likely to get ahead of those and say, let's make sure we've got all of these things considered.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've never built anything yourself, you come in, the first time, at least you're going to stumble on those things.
Yeah. So I heard a couple things. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to repeat what I heard.
Yeah, repeat back.
You're welcome, Julie.
What you thought you heard.
That's right. What I think I heard was, first of all, you can provide concrete examples of end-to-end product ownership to your interviewer. Yeah. Concrete. You built it, and then they came. It was
or didn't.
the first time ever, or didn't. I mean, yeah. And then obviously, like you're demonstrating innovative entrepreneurial thinking to build something that people want, and hopefully that will translate to a hiring manager. So those are two solid things I heard. Like other things I was thinking about, because this is the way my brain works, was that it shows that you can execute without supervision. It shows that you're a self-starter, that entrepreneurial mindset. And then it differentiates you from other PMs who have only ever like worked in corporate and did what they're told. So, you know what I mean? The LinkedIn get lunch all day product manager people that I see in my shorts for whatever LinkedIn calls. They don't call them shorts. I don't know what they call them. Anyway, and that's all good, except...
Here we go.
Except what I've seen in my career is hiring managers be reluctant to hire somebody who has gone off and built something for themselves or tried to start their own company or tried to forge in a different direction outside of typical being a product manager employee and then come back into product and get a job working for a company. And I, for some reason, and I never really ever, until now, I never really ever put any thought into why, but hiring managers hate those people.
I think there's two broad buckets, at least as far as I kind of understand it, right? So if you're a hiring manager, you speak to somebody who's built it themselves. One way you could think about this is, well, this guy's smart, right? They're technical, they're smart, they've built something. Granted, it wasn't the big success that they hoped it was, but are they articulating to me as a hiring manager what they've learned from it, etc., right? If they're not doing that, I might say, so what, right?
Yeah.
They'll be in buck pile A. But if they are, they'll be in the other pile. So it just depends on the hiring manager and what they're looking for, I think. But the flip side of it is, as an applicant, if you go in and say, I built this, that's one thing. But you say, I built this, here's what happened. If I had more resources, more this, more that, or if I had to do it all over again, this is how I would pivot it, and here's why. You're really relaying your learnings here. And if you can do that, I think it puts you at an advantage. So it's not a clear-cut kind of, does it help you or not help you? I think on both sides, it has to align.
Well, why have hiring managers been so opposed?
Oh, yeah. So going back to that, right? I think for the most part, hiring managers might be thinking that these people could just simply leave anytime and go back and do something themselves. Worst case scenario is they might steal something from us, right? Whatever that looks like. Come in here and get trained up on stuff, and then they leave. The other side of it is, and this shouldn't happen because there should be like tools in place to make sure this doesn't happen, but they make contact with our prospects and then they steal our prospects.
See, I've seen it many times.
Yeah.
but I really never really understood it, and I really don't have a good reason. I was thinking maybe the reason was the hiring managers saw these people as like lone wolves, people without good communication skills that are combative and that will advocate for and like a problem starters, that kind of thing.
You make a good point. Maybe these people will not fit into the corporate culture as well, right?
Yeah.
Of the company.
Quote, fit in.
Yeah.
And under the guise of fit in, I really mean these people might just say something when I say, just do what I say.
Exactly.
They might ask why. How dare they?
Imagine that. They should just be like falling in line. Be a minion. I think you're right. That could be other reasons. So if you're a hiring manager and you've come across this sort of thing, enlighten us.
I would like to know. The takeaway here, use self-building as a supplement, not a replacement. That would be like where we're leaning in this category.
For sure.
Replacement for professional experience. And then try to keep some kind of, I don't want to call it documentation, but try to write down your learnings. Keep them somewhere that you can refer back to them. Because if you're not writing them down anywhere, you have nothing to look back at.
Very true. That's good advice. Write it down so you can come back and visit that. I mean, you can always come back and say, in hindsight, maybe I should have got some product coaching, or maybe I should have engaged with more like a focus group of potential customers, things like that. That shows learning, right? If you don't do that, right, maybe you didn't do it when you built your product, but now you say that because you've recognized that as a deficiency, if you like, or like some kind of gap. That speaks volumes, and that might help. If you're a hiring person and you're thinking, well, these people are lone wolves, etc., but they say these things, maybe give them a chance. Maybe they can fit in.
So the last category for today is going to be business models. So we talked a little bit about like validating against the market and like keeping an eye on market trends. But I want to talk about business model understanding, because I think if there's one thing in here that strongly supports itself to the side that building something for yourself is a hack to product management, it's going to be the business model side of it. So the professional product managers, they have to understand how products generate revenue, how they acquire customers, the whole life cycle, right? And then personal projects, they can skip these business fundamentals because they're things that you're just using.
Right.
Just tools that you're using. You just want to build a better tool. So I just basically outlined the for and against right there, right? The personal projects, they ignore enterprise kind of reality, and scale business plan kind of stuff. So in the world of the for, I'm going to start with the for in this one just to see if I can do something different. Sure. Self-building, it forces you into business model thinking is what I would say. You personally are bearing the costs of building everything, paying for the tools, paying for hosting if you're on AWS or whatever, and then your time maintaining the product. Like you're spending all this time maintaining the product, building things, extending it, doing whatever. So you're constantly thinking about strategy.
You are, but if you're doing it yourself, what you don't have in mind are things like A versus B, right? Should I invest here or here, right? So while we're working on this, what's the opportunity cost? You're only working on one thing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily say that's a strong against or anything. I think it's just one of those things you learn very quickly when you get into a corporate environment.
Yeah. No, I understand, but I'm also thinking about all the places I've been a product manager, having to constantly fight with executives that just want to shortcut all of the Marty Kagan technical feasibility and business viability. Yeah, they want to shortcut all that stuff. Where here, you can't shortcut those things. If it's not viable for the business, you need to come up like the feature I was talking about before. Where, it's tracking all of my jobs and I can see everything in one place. Okay, that's great. Technically, can I build that where it's reliable and good and doesn't take me a week? Because again, I think a day is a long time to be coding one feature. And if it takes me a full week to build that, I mean, I basically could completely rewrite the tools from scratch.
I was going to say, that's the opportunity.
Yeah. So I'm going to look at those things differently. I think that is transferable to the professional product world, where I have to think about how it fits into the broader strategy of my tools and how customers will perceive them. I'm thinking about the market. So I'm building it for myself.
Yep.
I am advancing a strategy. Both sides of this one are kind of weak. Actually, now I'm taking a step back. They're saying like my prioritization should be tied in with the strategy. And if it's not, then I guess the against kicks in, where your personal project like ignores the reality of business. You're just creating cool new tools because you think they're cool.
Or you're doing it just to learn. Right?
But I would say like that's not been my experience. My experience is only if it is in line with a strategy that I'm shooting towards will I go down the road of creating that feature. If it's not tied to a strategy that I need that thing to do some business fun. That's the only reason I'm not building it because it would be cool to see.
Yep.
I'm not building cool tech to have cool tech to be like, hey guys, look at my cool tech. Oh, well, what are you going to use that cool tech for, Brian? Oh, I don't know. I just thought it was cool. I never would do any of that.
You don't. But if you're a solopreneur, you're building it for yourself, you're more likely to end up doing that than be in a corporate culture where your directions and your positions are challenged more.
And I think that's where the main arguing point about this one should have been is, do most businesses do that? I think
they should.
I think the solopreneur, the real arguing point here that we stumbled into is a lot of development teams just get told what to do. And now you're back to what we're trying to pin on these solopreneurs, the large businesses, because they got budget and because they got made money to burn. They're willing to do that, do what I say, development, until the market downturns, and then they lay off people. And then they go back to brass tacks or whatever. But the solo people, I think, they are not doing cool stuff just to do cool stuff. They're doing cool stuff because it's in pursuit of a strategy. So I would say they're probably more strategy first than most businesses that I have observed. Most businesses don't even write their business strategy down anywhere. So the product managers have to struggle to figure out even what to connect it to.
That is true. So here's something to think about. If you're a solopreneur, you're doing these products by yourself, you're building them for yourself. Do these products have to be profitable? Does it have to generate revenue? It's just you, right?
If you're not generating revenue with the features that you're building, then there might be a way to measure. Like, is it time savings? What is it that you're measuring? Because if you're building a tool for something, there's probably something you can measure coming out the other end. If it's time savings, great, measure that. If you're actually monetizing it and throwing it out there and getting other people to use it, then
even better.
But there's probably something you can measure to again, go back to what is the business strategy we're advancing, and then which does this feature take us down? The podcast tool I was talking about before. We got thumbnail creation. That's one strategy. You got podcast uploading to different platforms. That's another strategy with social media. Those are different strategies. So if I put time into better thumbnails, more fonts, more...
It leads to an attractive product.
Right, yeah, for people looking for thumbnails. So I just need to be looking at what features and in which direction I'm pushing.
Yep.
And then I just do some radically different, not including either of those strategies, development work. And it's not tied to any of my strategies as in play, I wouldn't do that. I would say, hey, I really want to try to figure out how to do this because I think it's cool, but it doesn't advance any of my strategies. So I'm going to put it way down in the backlog. And honestly, it probably will never get picked up.
That's how it should be.
But in the professional world, what happens is your boss comes down and says, I want this out by this date.
And I'm squarely into the pet products thing. Your boss comes in and says, this is what I want. In some professional organizations, this building cool stuff falls under invention labs or skunk works or whatever, right? Where a certain amount of R&D money is allocated to doing those sorts of things, which is great. So yeah, I agree. I think if you're a solopreneur and you're thinking about it like this, it either saves money, makes money, that's good. And sometimes there's an edge case there to think about where you say, well, it's going to do that, but it's not doing it now. So what I'm doing right now is just letting people know about this. It's coming. And that's just you're gaining mind share with the promise of future revenue. Yeah. So there's that to think about. But yeah, I agree. I think if you're thinking about it the way you just described you would as a solopreneur, that's great. But if you're a technically inclined person and you're building something, there is a very real likelihood that you might end up going down rabbit holes and building stuff just because you think it's cool.
Right.
You got to challenge that and say, no. Do you want to get ahead in the field of product management, or are you just simply looking to build good, cool stuff for the sake of it, maybe?
Right. I think that's the main conclusion of the podcast. It's a balancing act. You're not building stuff for yourself. It's not the ultimate PM battleground for life, and it's also not a complete waste of time because you're not learning anything ever in the world. It's kind of like you need to stay in the middle so you get the best of both worlds. And if you're not checking yourself, you're not writing anything down and following up, checking yourself as you progress, and you're not checking against the market. But if you're not doing a little bit of introspection along the way, you can get off track very quickly. Very quickly. I probably would agree with you probably can get off track a lot quicker than if you were working with a team and other people and stakeholders and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I can suggest perhaps something that might help as a kind of a beacon, if you will. along the journey if you're building something for yourself. Think about how you're going to get from prototyping something to a pilot. So in my mind, prototyping is iterative and you just basically improve the thing you've got,
Right.
but nobody's really getting their hands on it, right?
Yeah.
Putting it into a pilot phase, now you've got people that are interested. Maybe they don't necessarily use it in production, but they are getting their hands on it. Now you get feedback, right? So if you think about it that way, you're less likely to just go down that rabbit hole of building it just because it's a passion project.
Well, that makes total sense to me. It's a balance beam and building some checks and balances along with your balance beam. Have that giant pole with you so you can stay on the balance beam. What you just said right there, okay, pick something, build to it for a period of time that you can keep boxed in so you don't run away with all your time. And then when you're done with it, go interview some similar people that have the same problem to see if you're on the right track. So basically you're getting outside validation that you're on the right track for your own stuff, even though it's your own stuff. There are ways you can do this and be effective and not be trapped and go down the middle of this balance beam that we're talking about. And if you do that, let us know how you did it because we'd be super interested in
Yeah. So let us know down in the comments below. And don't forget, you can subscribe.